Hi, journeyers. I just wanted to take an opportunity, the beginning of 2025, and do just sort of like a wrap up of my first year. This is number 50, my 50th episode of Honoring the Journey. And it just also happens to be the first one of season 3 and the year 2025. So I wanted to just give a little update of some of the most important things I feel that I've learned in the first year of this podcast. It's been I don't know, one of the most amazing, eye-opening journeys I've ever had the pleasure of taking. And I kind of wanted to list out some of the things that I've learned in this. Not only, I mean, this year's been a lot for me. I am now a published author of a book called Honoring the Journey, the Deconstruction of Sister Christian. And, not only that, but I started a podcast and a business where I'm coaching and helping people through deconstruction and different life transitions. So, yeah, I've kind of thrown myself into really learning a lot by listening this year, and it has been amazing. So, I wanted to kind of list a few things. The first thing that I really noticed that I've learned is that, and I've learned this about myself, I am not afraid to fail. Um, but I'm actually kind of terrified of succeeding. And I'll explain what I mean. So failure to me is really not a big deal. I do it all the time. I actually have failed way more times than I've succeeded. This it's funny because people are like, man, you do so much and you're so good at things. And it's like, yeah, but you don't understand like how many times I fail. For instance, when I tried out for Survivor, it was like I tried out 11 times before they called me. I just kept learning that, okay, that's not what they're looking for. I need to, keep trying. And honestly, the time that they called me was when I was 100% authentically myself. I didn't try hiding anything about who I was. I just threw myself out there and then they called. So, how about that? So, I'm just learning that failure to me is just an opportunity to try differently or go in a different direction, whatever. At least then I don't have to live with that. What if I had done that? That goes away as soon as you try. Even if you fail, you succeeded in letting yourself know that that's not the way you're going to get there. Um, but let me explain this whole success thing because success to me is very different than what the world looks like. Success to me is when I'm like walking in my purpose and living out my passions and helping people along the way. I'm just very passionate about connection, community, making people feel loved and seen and heard. To me, that's success. But success to the world is when you're doing a really good job and maybe bringing money in. And, the thing about success in the world is that once you achieve a certain level, you have to keep doing it. So, if what you do takes a lot of creativity and time and effort, I feel like sometimes in order to continue to succeed in the world's eyes, I have to give more time and more effort and more creativity. And when I feel like I have to do something, I'm such a brat, you guys. I am such a brat. But when I feel like I have to do something, I usually don't want to do it. I want to do it because it's something I want to do, not because it's expected. I know that's really bad, but it's true. That's who I am. And I know that about myself. So I don't know. Success creates expectations, and expectations to me are like premeditated disappointments. If people are putting a bunch of expectations on you, they're already setting themselves up to be disappointed if you don't live up to them, especially when those expectations are not communicated. Um, and that continuing to create, even in those seasons of I don't really feel creative, but this is my job. And there's an episode that's due out on Monday, and I have to hurry and create. That is really hard for me. So I have to really push myself in directions, that are uncomfortable but important. So that's one of the things I learned. Another thing I've learned is that as human beings, we are all so much more similar than we are different. I have had many guests over the past couple seasons, and man, from different walks of life, different religions, different countries, different points of view. I've had a medium. I've had a woman who speaks to her grandmother who has been passed away for a long time. I have, people who've written New York Times best-selling books about religion, and I mean, and people who are just like you and me, like everyday people who are really wrestling through deconstruction, and just hearing their stories is making me realize that, um, and let me just, I'm going to preface this by saying this is probably the biggest lesson I've learned this year, because I keep learning it in different ways. Um, but like, we are all just trying to connect. We are all trying to express ourselves and our faith, which is very personal and internal. We're all just trying to do that in different ways. And um, this this notion that we have as human beings, that if you don't believe the way I believe, then you're wrong and you're deceived and you are following Satan, or you have a demon, or what, that to me is one of the biggest aha moments for me, is that the systems that we find ourselves in are the reason that we have enemies. It's not necessarily a personal thing. We just immediately make somebody an enemy if they don't see life the way we do. And I have learned this year in listening to these journeys and helping people and coaching them, and even in writing my book and kind of understanding where I was coming from, I've really learned that, you know, I don't think there's a cure for this, but I think we really do enjoy having a common enemy. I went to see Wicked. I don't know if you've seen it yet, and I know there's some Christian circles that absolutely hate it, and they're like, "Ooh, witchcraft and spells and all that." They're missing the point. The point of the movie is the tale as old as time, that systems like to create enemies so that it will bond the people. I want you to think about this for a second. When you were a teenage girl, or maybe even as a grown woman, sometimes we get together and we start talking about another person. And this could be somebody who is in our friend group who just doesn't happen to be there at the moment. And I've never been comfortable with this, and I have spoken out against it, but it is true. People love to talk about people. It bonds them. It makes them feel like they have this common enemy. It makes them feel connected. And, it gives them this weird boost. I wish I could explain it, but it's so, so toxic in our world. And there is no, I was actually talking to my sister this morning. I'm like, Maria, I want to talk about this with my listeners, but I can't really offer them any hope, because I think this is so who we are, that I don't know that I can change it or even give you advice on how to do that. But I am going to say, coming to this realization, I've realized I can't change systems. I won't even try. You know what I mean? But I can change how I react and the things that I do. So going forward, I personally have decided that I'm just going to try to lean into love. So whatever it is that's in front of me, whatever decision I need to make, whatever, conversation I'm in, just lean into love, because you really can't go wrong that way. And that's honestly, I think that the life of Jesus is a perfect example of that. If you really want to connect with people, you just need to drop the preconceived ideas of who they are and listen. And don't just listen to hear so that you can defend your point of view. Don't listen so that you can say, "Oh, that's against this scripture. I'll make sure to quote that," because they can't argue with that. I'm talking about really listening to someone, giving them a chance, because even though you've been told, this person who may be from a different religion, say, you've kind of grown up thinking, well, that's my enemy. But if you stop and you listen and you look them in the eye and you genuinely want to hear their story, you're going to realize you're the same. You're the same. You're really not that different. You may speak a different language. That's what religion is. It's different languages that we speak about our personal faith experience. And the people in our religion speak that language, so it feels right and it feels good. But that doesn't make the other languages wrong. And these are huge lessons that I have learned. Is there hope for the future? I really hope so. I really hope that as we take responsibility for our own selves and we start making educated, um, impartial judgments about things, instead of, oh, well, I've been told not to read that author, or I've been told not to listen to that person. Instead of that, say, you know what, I'm going to listen. What is the harm? If the Holy Spirit leads us into all truth, what are we so afraid of? I feel like anytime there is something that is like this ridiculous fear, if fear is keeping you from connecting and loving someone, then that needs to be questioned. I'm not saying fear is always wrong. I mean, for me, like I'm terrified of heights. I'm not going to go up in an airplane. I'm afraid of that. And you know what? That's my own personal fear, as far as like jumping out of it. I will get on an airplane and travel, but I'm not going to like go skydiving because I've done it once and I'm like, that was the most terrifying thing I've ever done. I'll never do it again. Um, it's an educated thing, and fear is very helpful in keeping me from doing something like that again. So I'm not saying fear is bad. But I am saying that when it keeps you from loving someone, when it keeps you from human connection, it needs to be questioned. What are you afraid of and why? And can you trust the power of God or source in your life as you go forward? Those are really important things I've learned. Also, listening is an essential skill. This is something I learned by through coach training as I became a certified coach, also in coaching and also in my podcast, just listening to people and asking questions. And one of the things I've done is not only do I listen to them, but I listen to the podcast when it's over. Like I'm the one who edits, so I have to hear it there. It's a little different because it's kind of chopped up when you're editing, but every time the podcast comes out, I will listen first thing Monday morning. And I do it for a couple of reasons. For one thing, I want to know what you're hearing as a listener. I really do. And also, I want to hear, am I listening? And I do find that quite often I jump in when things get quiet. If somebody is thinking about something, even if they're not finished with their thought, I will jump in and try to connect with them by saying, "Oh, me too. Yeah, me," and making it about me. And I hate that. I'm going to work on that this year. But I also want you to understand, like that's what I was taught in Christian radio. It is very ingrained in me to try to keep a conversation going, always be on. Don't let it be quiet. And then also connecting with people with an anecdote of your own is really exciting in radio. It brings people into a relationship, I think, with you and with the guest. Um, but what I'm trying to do is honor their journeys. And in doing so, I think sometimes I need to be a little more quiet and listen a little better. So I want you to know that if you've noticed that about me, thank you for noticing. But I'm going to work on that and I'm hoping it'll get better this year. Um, I don't know. Listening has changed me so much though, because when I was in evangelicalism, listening was always, there was always a motive. I mean, literally every relationship I had, every conversation I had, every job I did, it was all, there was a motivation and it was to make sure that that person got saved. And I understand that comes from a heart of love. I know that former Leslie was just literally just terrified that this person may not make it to heaven. I understand her heart was one of love. I do. And it doesn't make me upset that I was like that. It's what I knew. And if I'm being honest, if you really believe that people are going to go to hell if they believe a certain way or don't believe a certain way, you should be. That should be your motive for everything, is getting people out of it. So I was doing exactly what I was taught to do, but it really made it difficult for me to make a real connection with people. And when I finally dropped that, before I even left the church, I started really listening. Um, and I started to understand that maybe the reason I wasn't listening was because I was afraid to hear what these people were going to say. What if it made sense to me? Then what do I do? It's really scary. And I do think a lot of people, and I'm speaking to you right now, if you're going through deconstruction and you have people around you who are angry, they're triggered by, some of the things you say. Um, I understand why they feel that way. I would have felt the same way about me 10 years ago. It's really scary when somebody comes up against the thing that you believe will keep you safe and secure for all of eternity. And when you're walking in that fear, everything is scary. So one of the things I've learned is to not take things personal. When people are angry with me, and I get it a lot, I get a lot of people who are mad at me. I also, by the way, get a lot of people who are like, thank you for saying what I've been thinking. I feel so heard. I feel understood. I don't feel like I'm crazy. So I'm getting both. Um, as somebody who was a people pleaser for a very long time, a female in religion, in ministry, you have to be a people. I mean, like, you're trained to be a people pleaser, because if you're not, that means somebody may not want to have a relationship with God. If they don't like you, they may not like God. I mean, no pressure, right? Yeah, a lot of pressure. But, being that people pleaser that I was, I think I'm learning that um, I'm never going to be able to please people now. Not everybody. And that's okay. You know what? To be honest, I don't like everybody, and everybody doesn't like me. And if you don't like me, that is not going to affect your relationship with God. I know that now, but it did take deconstruction to get me out of that mindset. Another thing I've realized through doing the podcast and really everything that I'm doing is that I found my voice, and I found my truth. And even in saying that, I know I just lost some of you, especially if you're still in evangelicalism, because you're like, there is no my truth. It's the truth, or there is no truth. But I want you to understand something. There is a my truth, because you don't know what I've been brought up in. You don't know my family situation, the churches that I've been, everything that has happened in my life has created my perspective, my point of view. That is my truth. And guess what? It is probably not the same as yours. Now, there are times where we may agree in certain things, and that feels good, right? It feels really good when oh, yeah. That's why when you find a friend and you're like, oh my gosh, have you ever thought this? And they're like, oh my gosh, I think that all the time. You're like, oh, thank God I'm not crazy. Um, we love that connection, but not everybody is going to connect, and that's okay. I I found my truth in that I've realized that the way I see the world, the way I see eternity, the way I see God, all of that is just my perspective. Nobody has to believe it the way I do. Nobody has to see it the way I do. The only thing I know beyond a shadow of a doubt is that whatever is next, it's good. And I also know beyond a shadow of a doubt that whatever's right now is important. And that's not something that I ever believed when I was in religion. When I was an evangelical, I was always thinking of later, like when I die. When you die, it's kind of the question they ask: are you sure you're going to go to heaven? Do you believe it in your heart or your head? Is that it's, man, I missed out on a lot because I was so worried about what's going to happen next, which, if we're honest, none of us really knows what that is. That I was missing the here and now. I was missing out on relationships. I was missing out on connection. And I was afraid all the time, but now I'm not. So that's been kind of cool. That's kind of a truth that I'm walking in. And also my voice. I remember many years ago, and I write about this in my book, I went to see, and I felt really weird doing it because I was only a few years into my deconstruction. And this was kind of out of my comfort zone. I went to go see this woman who was going to read my chakras. One of my friends said, you should do this. It'll be fun. I'm like, ooh, that sounds scary and satanic. So as I'm in there, I'm like praying under my breath the whole time, like, okay, God, if I'm doing something that's not right, you need to let me know. And the whole time I felt just this incredible peace. Like, listen, I kept thinking of that verse, the verse that says, to the pure, all things are pure. And I was like, Leslie, your heart is pure here. You just want to understand what this means, why people do this. Just relax, right? And I never felt like God was like, nope, you're doing the wrong thing. I felt like, just relax and let me speak to you. So she gets to my throat and she gasped and she was like, you are 98% blocked in your throat chakra. And I was like, well, what does that mean? I don't even know what that means. And she said, well, it means you have a really hard time speaking your truth. And when she said your truth, I had that thought in my head, there is no my truth. It's God, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one gets to the Father. It was all like, oh, she's one of them. I put her in a box. But I still tried to listen because I still didn't feel like God was saying no. I felt like God was saying, relax. She's my child. She's using a gift. Let it be. And she said, do you have a hard time saying things that you feel? Do you have a hard time doing that? And granted, this is like 3 years into my deconstruction where I have been saying nothing, absolutely nothing. I just shut down. I didn't, speak to anybody. I was just listening because I didn't know what to say. I was like, I wasn't ready. And in that moment though, like I realized, wow, okay, she has a point. Whether or not this worked or not, I don't know. I mean, but it was pretty freaking weird, if you ask me, that she was just so blown away by my throat chakra being. She's like, I very rarely see somebody that is this blocked. And so she did some stuff. I don't know what she did, with things and chants and all that. And um, that was a little uncomfortable for me, not gonna lie, but I just relaxed. And when I left, I was like, um, maybe I need to start practicing speaking my truth a little bit. And so I would start talking to friends and I would start talking to family who I trusted. And I would just kind of say, this is where I'm at. Is this, am I okay? And I realized in doing so that somebody who is a verbal processor like me, it was very important that I do that. So I have found my voice and I found my truth. And I'm so thankful that I wasn't afraid to start this process, this, of being more vocal with the podcast, with my book. The fears that I had going into that, and this is another thing I've learned, um, they were irrational. It was like all of these voices were saying, be careful, be careful. Oh my gosh, people are going to be so upset. But as I'm speaking, I'm like, yeah, there's people that are upset. There's always people who are upset. Always, guys. You're always going to piss somebody off. So you can either let that hold you back and keep you from speaking, or you can say, that's okay. My message is not for you. And that's okay. Don't take it personal. Most of the time, people are upset because you are the enemy that their system has told them to avoid. And if you really think back, it's true. It's true. So it's not really about you as a person. There's nothing that you've done personally. It's just that you are fitting into that typecast and they have put you in a box and they have judged you. And that is their problem. And they're going to miss out on a connection with a beautiful human being because of that. And that's on them. It's not on you, babe. So anyway, that's where I'm at with that. Also, this is a big one that I don't think we hear about enough, is that um, deconstruction content creators are often paying to do what they do. They're not getting paid. Um, the content that we all enjoy, whether it be podcasts or blogs or whatever, a TikTok, 90, probably 5, and I'm making that up, but I'm just saying so many of us are not making money. We're paying to do this. And we're doing it because we're passionate about it and we care about you and we want you to feel seen and heard and understood. That's why people are doing this. And so um, here's the weird thing. Many of us are deeply and painfully aware of how maybe religion or systems have taken advantage of people by taking their money or scamming them or whatever. And so I think that we're all just we're not really talking about this, but we all know how tender this is. And the last thing I would want you to do is like turn on my podcast and be like, God, she sounds just like ministries that I was so hurt by. She's asking for money. She wants support. So you're just not going to get that from me. I may give you an opportunity to join my Patreon, but literally I'm going to create this content with or without you because I believe in it and I think it's important. Do I appreciate the support that I get from my Patreon community, which I want to say there might be 4 who are paying. So it's not like you guys, I'm not getting rich on this at all. I pay to do it because I believe in it and I love it. And it gives me a space to heal by listening to these journeys and just by being honest about where I'm at. I think there's something really healing in that for me. So yeah, I just want you, if there is, and maybe somebody just came to your mind, a content creator who has made just an impact on you. I tell you what goes a longer way than even monetarily support is encouragement. So send them a DM, let them know you make a difference in my life. Thank you for that. Because I'm telling you, there is some good that comes, but there's a lot of negative stuff that comes at these content creators. And I think you probably have seen maybe some of your favorites have dropped out of sight. It happens all the time. They go at it and they go at it and they go hard and they make such an impact and then they burn out. And it is very difficult. And I get it because last year, and this is another thing I've learned, um, I've learned I need margin in my life. I have been so passionate about starting my coaching business, the podcast, writing the book, trying to let people know that this is out there for them. I've been so passionate about that that I have literally put on hold a lot of the things in my life that bring me joy. I stopped teaching fitness classes. That was some of it was because I was going through some heart issues, but I'm on medication now. I'm doing much better. So I'm going to start teaching again this year. I'm going to start teaching fitness because it brings me joy. And guys, like it's so funny to say this. I feel almost weird saying it, but like I know I'm really good at it. There's not a lot of things that I feel this confident about. I'm good at it because I love it and I'm passionate. And I've been doing it for over 30 years. So I'm going back to teaching, and that's already giving me so much life as I go into 2025. Another thing I kind of put on the back burner was friendships. I have been sort of invisible. I haven't been going to work out and be with my friends. I was pretty good about like maybe going to lunch a couple of times a month or whatever, but I have been sort of just focused intensely on getting everything going and cranking out a podcast every single week so that you have content, trying to grow the audience, which is exhausting. um, and it's hard, like it's really really hard to do this because the second you take a break, out of sight out of mind, guys. Like if people don't see a new episode popping up every week, your numbers show it like big time. And I noticed that in my break between season 1 and season 2 last year. My numbers went way down when I started season 2, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can never take a break. I'm gonna lose listeners." And then I realized, "What are you doing? You're looking at success from a worldly perspective. Like, yeah, that's how the world measures success. How many listeners do you have? How many Patreon supporters do you have?" But for me, I know that the satisfaction I get in knowing that I'm helping people and giving voice to journeys that are, where people are going through things, that's successful for me when I walk in that. So I've decided this year I am going to do a podcast every other week so that I'm not drowning in editing and, promoting. And it got to be a lot. And by December, I took the entire month off because I felt like I was going insane. Like I literally couldn't do any more. And I don't want that to be my future. I want to be as passionate as I've always been about this. And I am. And I think taking that break, really listening to myself and understanding, okay, you need some margin. That was a really big deal for me. So that's what I'm going to do. And I hope that's okay with you. I hope you'll keep listening. It'll be every other week, but I'm still going to bring great content. I have some really great interviews that have already been edited, but just aren't going to be airing yet. But um, so that's, I think, pretty much most of what I've learned. I do want to say a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. I also want to really do a shout out and a big thank you to Karen Schock, who did this podcast with me. She was my co-host for the first season of Honoring the Journey. I don't even think I would have started doing this if it weren't for her. She gave me the guts to jump. And, sometimes we all need a friend like that. And she was there the first season. She ended up leaving just for personal reasons, not because she didn't love it. I know she loved doing it. But I tell you what, I was like, oh gosh, maybe I need to just not do it now. And then I was like, no, Leslie, you've got momentum. You love this. Just, keep trying. And I did. And so, boy, if it weren't for Karen, I don't know what I'd do. And I really do hope I can get her on the show soon so we can do a life update and get to see like what she's been up to and what she's learned over the last year. Because without her, I don't think we would be here. We definitely wouldn't be here. I would still be afraid. I needed somebody to believe in me, and she did. So I love you, Karen, and I miss you. Um, and then as we go forward in 2025, I really just want to hold everything very loosely. I just want to enjoy this ride a little more and stop being so intense about it. Um, I'm going to continue doing my coaching. I'm going to continue doing the podcast, and I may even write again. I don't know. Right now, I'm just kind of, um, I am writing, but it's more like journaling, and maybe that'll be something someday. Who knows? But um, yeah, so that's where I'm at. And I am looking forward to this season of life of a little more margin, focusing more on my well-being and my family and my marriage and just enjoying life a little more. So I hope you will join me in that. And I want to say thank you to you for listening and for being a part of my life. And even if you don't agree with everything that I say or believe, just that you're listening to me tells me that you love me. And I appreciate that very much. And I honor your journey, whatever that may look like. Even if you're still in evangelicalism, I honor your journey. Listen, that was part of my story. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I learned so much in that season of my life. So whoever you are, wherever you are, I love you. And I hope that you will continue to find encouragement and enlightenment in the journeys that we're going to be sharing this year. Thanks so much for hanging out, and I will see you very soon.